Can I start by welcoming our Mayor, Councillor Vinnie McCormack, the Cathaoirleach of Westmeath County Council, Angus O'Rourke, the Deputy Mayor of Athlone, Councillor Frankie Keenan. We also welcome here all the other councillors on the Westmeath County Council and Athlone Municipal Council. We also welcome here today the Officer Commanding Costume Barracks, Lieutenant Oliver Clare, accompanied by Sergeant Major Nuttall from Costume Barracks. We also welcome here Leo Quinlan, who is the son of Commandant Pat Quinlan, who was the commanding officer of the 35th Infantry Battalion that were in Jadotville. Ladies and gentlemen, we also welcome here our good friends from Post 9, the UN Veterans Association here in Athlone. We also welcome anybody else that's here related to the Army. And we also have some friends here, I believe, from Mullingar, the ONE, and I'd also like to welcome my good friend from Mullingar, Councillor, Ruth Illingworth, who's a historian and author. You're all very welcome here today. We will get proceedings underway. I have a few people to thank, but I also want to do a personal address on Assumption Road. Assumption Road was built in 1950 by McInerney the builders. We couldn't get Weetabix the builders at the time. In any case, there was 118 houses built, and of those houses, registered young soldiers who were married came here to Assumption Road, and there were 72 of them. There were soldiers from 24 different counties, and I'd like to name those counties because there's a particular reason. They were from Louth, Clare, Tyrone, Westmeath, Galway, Offaly, Longford, Tipperary, Sligo, Donegal, Kilkenny, Laois, Cork, Limerick, Monaghan, Leitrim, Kerry, Sligo. That's the whole lot of them. Please give them a big warm welcome. Three soldiers from Assumption Road lost their lives, and I'm just reflecting on the history of Assumption Road. It's very unique in that sense. Three soldiers lost their lives, and they were Corporal John McGrath. He died in 1963 in the Congo. Then there was Private Niall Byrne. He died in 1981 in the Lebanon. And then in 1986, Corporal Peter Ward, who was a brother-in-law of Private O'Brien, and then they are commemorated also here on this memorial. and they are featured here on the right hand side. You can view them later on. There was also 3 other soldiers from Athlone we have commemorated here today, and they were Lieutenant Colonel Paul Delaney, CQ Kai Sergeant James Martin, and it'll come to me in a minute. Sorry. In any case, we are here today to commemorate the 155 soldiers, officers, men and NCOs who served in Jadotville in September 1961. We will be unveiling our memorial, and you can view everything afterwards and take photographs and whatever. As I said, Assumption Road is very, very unique. It has a great military history, and we're delighted that the Army is here today as well. So can you give them all a big round of applause? I myself served in Custom Barracks. I was a medic in the 4th Hospital Company, and if I could just reflect for a moment how this memorial came. I'm writing a book at the moment on 200 soldiers from Athlone who were killed in the First World War. I hope to have it completed next year. You're all invited. And what came out of that was, in my research, I was researching medals in relation to soldiers, because I'm doing a section of medals of soldiers who won medals in all conflicts. And I came across one. It was a DSM, which was received by Jim Ferry. Now Jim is on the Siege of Jadotville Memorial, but he received that medal at a later stage in another battle. I believe it was in Elizabethville. Is that right, Leo? And in doing so, I came across a website on counties that soldiers were from. And I had to look twice when I seen 55 soldiers from Westmeath, 7 from this county, 6 from that county, 3, 2, 1, whatever. And I thought, 55 from Westmeath, that's huge. And then I seen roughly, I think, around 26 from Athlone, and I knew there was 13 from Assumption Road. And that actually meant that Assumption Road had the highest representation of any street, town or city or village in Ireland at the Siege of Jadotville. Now those soldiers were, as we have them here on the headstone. The rank is given as per the rank when they served in Jadotville. They were Private Paul Malone, Sergeant McCabe. Then we had Private Butch McManus, Sergeant John Monaghan, Private Tom Kelly, Private Christy Roach, Private Matthew McGrath, Private John Whirtley's name is given, but he was commonly known as Donald. Then we had a Private John Hughes, and I only learned last week in discussion with my sister Kay that Private John Hughes actually lived in our house. I didn't know that, but he was married to Fitzgibbons, not the Fitzgibbons we all know, and out of that he married her. As Miss Fitzgibbons died, he went to England, but I'm not sure what happened to him after that. So we have placed 13 Irish flags on each of the houses of the serving members of the soldiers of the Siege of Jadotville. Please give them a big round of applause. I'd like to thank especially our good friend Leo Quinlan, who is the son of Commandant Pat Quinlan, the commanding officer of the 35th Infantry Battalion at Athlone, and he's here with his wife today. He was also here yesterday where he did the talk on the Siege of Jadotville. It was my 3rd time to see it, and every time I see it, it gets more exemplary. Leo Quinlan and his father has a special relationship with the military history of Assumption Road, because Leo cycled on a bicycle as a 16-year-old with all the information that was relayed back to his family by phone or otherwise, and he got the information on the ground. And as we all know, at one stage it was reported that all the soldiers of the Siege of Jadotville was killed. But then it came back the next day that this wasn't the case, and the tears were quickly wiped away, and the joy and the smiling and on the street was a wonderful experience. Now, the soldiers that came from the 26 different counties, if I may say, the Army has special disciplinary and military skills, but all over this country they also have massive matchmaking skills. And why is this? They brought the best soldiers to marry the most beautiful women in Athlone. So now, Lieutenant Colonel Clare is not aware of that, but he's aware now. In any case, we are a very proud traditional street that has a massive relationship with the Army here in Athlone. We're very unique in all the information I've just relayed to you. I thank everybody for coming here. I thank all of the people in Assumption Road and all our community here. Can we now give them a big round of applause? In our special relationship to remember the 155 soldiers, we are here today to respect them, honour them, commemorate them and remember them. And this is so important in our community. But I want us all here to remember all of the soldiers, their families, their relatives, who served in the Defence Forces and are now deceased. To all members of Garda Síochána who lost their lives in active service and their families. And to all members of ONE and UN vets whose families are now deceased. I do this in saying that we all stand together now, please. And we do so in respect, with remembering all of them with 1 minute silence. Thank you. You can be seated now, please. Just about a 2-minute brief. There's lots of people we have to thank here today, and we have to thank them because without their input, this project would not be here today. First of all, I would like to thank Westmeath County Council, who gave us, through Councillor Frankie Keenan, gave us several grants. There were community-based grants, community enhancement grants. This is a community enhancement grant here, and festival and event grants. And without their support, I can definitely say one thing, we would not be here today. Please give them a big round of applause. For everyone else hereafter that I mention in thanks, please reserve your applause until the end. I would appreciate that. We would also like to thank Athlone Town and Moat Municipal Council and all the councillors here today. They passed this project and the engineer Pat Nally came out and passed it. The council also gave us this land. So it's a little bit like planning permission. You have to know where you're going with it. So that's really important. And I thank them. I'd also like to thank the residents of Assumption Road, Tormy Villas and this wider community for the great support. For supporting our Christmas and Easter raffle, I'd like to thank the Coots and Tavern, Dan's Tavern, the Fiddlers and Lord Bellamy's. I'd also like to thank Garda Síochána for the support here today. I'd also like to thank Dunn Stores, Spectrum Signs, Tom O'Brien, who's here doing the videoing for us, and he's helped us out in an awful lot of ways. I'd also like to thank all the support that we got from everybody that had an input into this project. So I'd like you to all now give them a big round of applause. We will proceed now with the whole ceremony. So I'd like to call on Councillor and Mayor Vinnie McCormack to come up and to do his speech. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anthony, and apologies firstly to any that I might be turning my back on. It's not intentional. Just before I say a few words, I just want to mention a couple of things that I was blown away by when I came in here first. Firstly, the stature and the prominence of the very fitting memorial that has to be unveiled here today. I think it shows a huge sense of pride in the area in what people who have gone before us have done, who have come from Assumption Road, and it's a wonderful, fitting tribute. But I also want to mention the fantastic turnout that's here, and it shows a real pride in the people of Assumption Road, in what you have to offer, in what the people who have gone before in Assumption Road have done. So I just think you should all give yourselves a big round of applause for the great pride you have in the area. Now, ladies and gentlemen and distinguished guests, it's a great honour for me to be here today as Mayor of the District for this anniversary celebration to celebrate 72 years of a wonderful area, and also for the unveiling of this wonderful memorial to the men of Jadotville. Since this area was first occupied 72 years ago this month, it has been a real model of what an area can be, what a house and estate can be, and the great example it can give to the wider community. And I think it's fair to say that Assumption Road is a really strong link in the fabric that is Athlone, and has provided so much to the town over the years. The contribution of Assumption Road to the community and to the town is no stronger than in its huge links and heritage within the military and within the defence forces. When the road was first built, many of the houses were occupied by members of the defence forces, and many of those families have continued on down through the generations to live in Assumption Road. And I know at this stage there would be up on 3 generations in some families in Assumption Road who have contributed to the defence forces, and I think that's a wonderful achievement for an area. I want to take this opportunity as Mayor of the District to compliment and thank the Residents Association and also the organising committee of today's events. I think they've done an absolutely fantastic job, and I just want to compliment also all of the individual residents for how well turned out the area is. I think it looks fantastic and you can take real pride in it. A huge amount of planning and preparation has gone into today's event, and I think you'll all agree, and thankfully the man above was looking down kindly on us as well, that it really shows off the area for what it is, and we're all thankful to be here. As mentioned by Anthony previously, there's been a huge sacrifice from Assumption Road towards the Defence Forces, and in particular in the story of Jadotville that we heard of from Leo yesterday, and we've heard many times over the years. 13 men of the 155 men at Jadotville hailed or had addresses in Assumption Road. And I think when you stand back and think about that at the minute, it gives you a great sense of pride in the men and women who came from Jadotville, who came from Assumption Road. Ireland undoubtedly has had a long and distinguished history of peacekeeping, and we see some of our great forefathers in that regard here beside us, and is respected right throughout the world for their selfless and compassionate work across a number of continents. Throughout this proud history, there has surely never been a finer hour than Jadotville, where a small company of commissioned and non-commissioned officers stood stoutly against the strong force of Katangan troops and mercenaries in a 5-day siege, inflicting heavy casualties upon the enemy during that time. What unfolded over those 5 days in Jadotville is an astonishing story of heroism against all odds and a feat of pure courage. We in Athlone will forever be proud of our heroes in Jadotville, and we sincerely thank the people of Assumption Road for the lasting legacy to those brave men and their families. Assumption Road has today ensured that the story of Jadotville will be told for generations to come, and we are all very grateful for that. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Can I now call forward retired Commandant Leo Quinlan.
Thank you, Anthony. Good afternoon, everybody. Assumption Road. I first became aware of Assumption Road at the age of 14 when my father was transferred from Galway to Athlone. I took custom barracks. I started going to school in the Marist with Assumption Road guys playing football against them. And one thing you have to remember is don't take these tough lads for granted. Even at 14, 15 years of age, it became very apparent to me that Assumption Road had something kind of special, the way they thought about themselves. That was when I was 14. Then 2 years later, when I was 16 and the Battle of Jadotville was taking place, as Anthony has referred to, my mother one of the only phones in the area, and my mother used to get phone calls from the barracks and from Army headquarters giving the latest information. Mostly it was wrong, getting it from BBC and other places. I'd get on my bicycle that the Army gave me, and I'd cycle down to Assumption Road and other places, Sastre Square, etc. But when I arrived at the top of Assumption Road there, it's almost like there was sentries were out, because immediately people came running out to get the latest information. I gave it such as it was. And then the Friday, as Anthony has mentioned, was a very bad day, when the Evening Herald had it that the company was massacred, 20, they said, officers executed by firing squad, etc. Not a nice day. Saturday was a terrible day, when various people came to my mother's house, other officers and so on, wives I should say, and we were talking about how would we have funeral services without bodies, and it was that kind of a day. Saturday was not a nice day. Sunday morning came, and still we were in limbo, with no knowledge coming of information of any kind. And then my mother got a phone call from Army headquarters to say they're all alive. I got on my bicycle, came down, and at the same time as I arrived in Assumption Road, a staff car arrived from Custom Barracks with a command duty officer in it. I remember his name, Commandant Owen Curtin. And he, with tears running down his face, he got out of the car, and everybody thought the worst, but he said, no, give me a moment. And when he collected himself, he then told them, everybody's alive, everybody's okay. And as Anthony mentioned, they were jumping for joy, crying for joy, etc. Then came captivity, and the Army gave me an old spooled tape recorder, the old-fashioned one, and put it on the back of my bike. I went around to all the houses here and Sastre Square and Tommy Villas and other places, and took messages from the wives, children, mothers, fathers from Assumption Road for the troops out in Jadotville, and I'd sent it out via Red Cross to my dad with a A4 sheet of paper saying, Dad, number 1 is for Sergeant Monaghan, number 2 is for Sergeant Rella, and number 3 is for Sergeant McCabe, etc. So he'd play it to them and then play it back, their messages over that, and sent back to me saying, Leo, go first to Mrs. Monaghan, second to Mrs. McCabe, etc., which I did. And all that made me get to know Assumption Road better at that level. And there were young boys and girls, 4, 6, 9 years of age, that I still meet to this day. They're now a little bit older, and they say, do you remember when you called to our house years and years ago? And I did. I didn't analyze it too much at the time, but it defined me, and it defined me and the Army, etc., etc. But that's another story. Then after Jadotville, the Quinlan connection, by the way, we lived in Beach Park, only about 400, 500 yards from the top of Assumption Road. And afterwards, I remember Sergeant John Monaghan and others from Assumption Road coming to my father's house, helping him save the turf out in the bog, bring it to the house, stack it up in the garage when it was dried out, etc., and going in, and my mother would have dinner ready for everybody and a few whiskies or whatever was going. So there was that kind of relationship that continued between my father and the men of Assumption Road. It just comes into my mind now, 13 men of Assumption Road in the Battle of Jadotville. People, they should know it, but the Battle of Jadotville was still is the single biggest battle the Irish Army has been involved in on its own against a foreign enemy since the formation of the state. And this is now being taught in umpteen countries in the world, but that's another story again. Anyway, my personal relationship continued with Assumption Road when I came back here as young captain, and I was meeting then Sergeant Major Jack Prendergast, Battalion Quartermaster Sergeant Paddy Neville, Sergeant Monaghan, Sergeant McCabe, who by the way was my scoutmaster when I was 14 years of age before I joined the FCA, and everybody else. And these men, they took a young captain like me under their wing, and they gave me advice, and I listened to it, and basically they nurtured me and they trained me, and I always appreciated that. Then my relationship with Assumption Road continued when Sergeant Willie Sweeney from the top of Assumption Road, he and I were on the same Ranger course. And later on, quite a few people from Assumption Road were in the company I had the privilege to serve, to command in the 6th Battalion here. So Assumption Road has an awful lot to be proud of in relation to its military experience. And something just comes to my mind. Sergeant Jeffrey Cuff is here today. Jeff, it was your son, Father Liam, and who mentioned that he was a Jadotville baby. This is kind of important in a way, a Jadotville baby, which means he was born after the men came home from Jadotville. So I did a rough calculation, not just me, another guy helped me. We did a rough calculation, and if you take 155 coming home, how many would have got married, how many children, blah, 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 blah. There are approximately between children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren alive in Ireland today, probably close to 10,000 that are alive, because everybody came home safe from Jadotville. And recently in Brussels, I was at something where I met military attaches from every country, many countries. And the one thing, every single one of them, first of all, they all knew about Jadotville, all these generals and colonels and so on. The one thing they all said, fantastic, they all came home alive. So in any event, that's enough. But as well as Sergeant Joe Jukes and various other people from Assumption Road that I had the privilege to serve with long years after Jadotville, I just take my hat off to them all. And Assumption Road is a lot to be proud of in relation to its community and in relation to its service to the Army. Thank you very much.
I now call on Lieutenant Colonel Oliver Clare, representing the Defence Forces.
Fellow guests, dignitaries, everyone here present, I suppose it's not often that a member of the Defence Forces gets to speak in public about something so significant and important as this. And it gives me great pride and great honour to stand here today and actually say these few words. And I think that's the best place to start. The first thing I'm going to do is get the formalities out of the way and say what a great job the Residents Committee here and the residents of Assumption Road have done, and what a fitting tribute this monument is to the men of A Company 35th Infantry Battalion and to those who have died in service in the Defence Forces who are named on it. And you should be very proud of that. It is an important thing to do, to recognise service and the contribution to the community. As I stand here as a serving soldier and I look at the monument, I think about two things broadly. The first one is service and the second one is sacrifice. When I talk about service, I don't talk about blindly following orders. I talk about a higher importance. I talk about doing the right thing. I talk about a commitment that's greater than yourself. We in the Defence Forces today articulate that as a set of values. Those values are moral courage, physical courage, integrity, honest, truthfulness, and we have a code that is now written down. But when you think about that code doesn't come from a book. That code doesn't come because someone decided it was the right thing to do. That code is actually built by these men here. It's actually built by their service. It's the rules that they felt were right. It's the practices that they felt were right. It was the decisions, the tough decisions that they made on the ground that built the legacy that we call the Defence Forces today. And I must say, in terms of service, it makes me very proud as a serving officer to be working with the legacy of these soldiers today. Also to be setting the standards that they first set for us and be trying to live and develop those standards as we progress. And if one thing that worries me is that we'll actually, in our time of test or in our time of need, that we can live up to these standards, because they're a big ask and they were a massive and very significant contribution to who we are as the Defence Forces today. The second piece I wanted to mention was service. The service of these men is very obvious, or the sacrifice of these men is very obvious, and it's easily to categorise. But there's a second group of people when we talk about sacrifice, and that's the people that stand here before me today. It's the families of those who serve. It's the families of Assumption Road and the residents of Assumption Road. For every man on that plaque, there is a family who did without a father. There is a family who did without a son. There is a community who did without its leader. There is a sports club who did without its members, its coaches, its referees. It's a community who did without its best. And all too often we can recognise the service of those who serve overseas or those who serve with contribution to the Defence Forces. But no less significant is the service of the families and a community that allow us to serve and that support us in that service. And I think it's fitting to remember those today as well, because it's the families and that community that made their sacrifice and that allowed these people to do what they needed to do in Jadotville when it needed to be done. So I promised the organisers I'd be very brief, and I will. I'll conclude in saying these words. I am very proud and honoured to stand here today. I am very proud and honoured to represent an organisation that has, as these men, its forefathers, who has the values that these men have set us. And I'm very proud to strive to live up to those standards, and hopefully we will in the future. And finally, to compliment you, the residents of Assumption Road, Athlone community, and everyone else who has contributed so much to the service of the Defence Forces, who has sacrificed so much to make it happen. Thank you very much, and we appreciate that sacrifice.
I now call on our good friend and our committee member, Deputy Mayor of Athlone, Councillor Frankie Keeney.
Chairman of Westmeath County Council, Councillor Angus O'Rourke, Mayor of Athlone, Vinnie McCormack, and Councillor Paul Hogan, Lieutenant Colonel Oliver Clare, Cushion Barracks, Sergeant Major Graham Nuttall, retired Commandant Leo Quinlan, our heroes of Jadotville and their family members, current and retired members of all units of our Defence Forces, including the UN vets and ONE, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are marking two major events. One, the 61st anniversary of the Siege of Jadotville, and the other, the 72nd anniversary of Assumption Road. Due to COVID, these events were deferred up until now, but it did not stop the resilience of an excellent local committee to deliver. It is indeed a great honour for me to address you all here today for the unveiling of this memorial, to commemorate and honour those 155 Irish soldiers of the A Company 35th Battalion for their heroism and bravery during the Siege of Jadotville in 1961. As we all know, they were serving at the time on a peacekeeping operation mission as part of United Nations operations in the Congo, where they were attacked by over 3,000 Congolese soldiers. The ensuing battle inflicted approximately 1,300 casualties, including up to 300 people being killed on the attacking force, and no deaths amongst the A Company. I am so proud of these men, and I would like to sincerely thank them all for their service, for their bravery, and for flying the Irish flag with pride. Please give them a round of applause, please. The importance of Custom Barracks to Athlone and the Midlands continues to be paramount. Over the decades, the Defence Forces has served Athlone extremely well, where many soldiers located here and raised their families. It is so important that Custom Barracks regains this higher status within the Defence Forces. I wait in hope that the final outcome of the Commissioner's review on the Defence Forces will deliver for Athlone. The houses in Assumption Road were built back in 1950, and the first residents who moved into the estate were predominantly army families. Thus, it is not surprising to see that 13 soldiers from Assumption Road took part in the Siege of Jadotville. This is the single largest number of soldiers from any street in Ireland. The community spirit in Assumption Road is exceptional, where the residents always look out and support one another. A more recent example of this voluntary spirit was evident earlier this week when residents were out painting, putting up bunting, installing flower tubs, etc. to enhance the estate for this particular event. Today we have residents not just from Assumption Road, but also from Tormey-Villas, St Kieran's Terrace and other estates, joining us to mark these two special events. It is also great to know that some diaspora have travelled home to be with us here today. In addition, over the decades, various businesses were located in the area. And again, it is lovely to see representatives of those businesses here with us. This event did not just happen by chance, but it took a lot of planning and meetings by a very hard-working voluntary committee ably led by Anthony Merrigan. So please put your hand together for Anthony Merrigan, please. I was delighted to be invited to be a part of that particular committee. Other committee members who worked endlessly are Tina McCrossan, Kathleen Webb, Mary Kilmartin, Martin Riley, Anthony Riley, John McCrossan, Anne Monaghan and Jim Henson. Numerous meetings took place over the last couple of years, and I said some meetings were vociferous, some meetings were we got on very well, but the end result is what we see here behind us today, and I want to commend each and every one of that particular committee, so well done to you all. A special mention of thanks to the numerous volunteers who are helping out here today. You can see all those with their yellow jackets and that type of thing. And that shows the community spirit which is there. They're really like bees and honey. There's so many people out helping out. And I've been told that early this morning, at 8 a.m. this morning, the whole terrace was alive with people out doing things. And that is what community is about. So thank you for that. The tents up on the street are open there for people to come up to kind of view fantastic photographic memories of Jadotville and also of the Defence Forces and of local people in the area. And there's also thanks to the local committee again and to many people in the area who are providing teas and coffees and sandwiches, so please join for that. Again, it's fantastic community spirit. The financial support provided towards this event by Westmeath County Council and local businesses is very much appreciated. Indeed, the ongoing support given by the residents to the various fundraisers, as was pointed out by Anthony, was just amazing, and sincerely thank you for that. I would also like to thank the council's management, the engineering staff and the arts officer for their advice, for their guidance in planning this particular project. And also thanks to the Gardaí who are here today helping with traffic management. So please also, ladies and gentlemen, just right behind me is this fantastic memorial. And this fantastic work was done by an individual called Ollie Dillon, and I want to commend Ollie on the work and his workmanship, so put your hand together for Ollie. And also for Sean Flynn for supplying the stone and the inscriptions, and also the flagpoles by Martin O'Brien. So thank you again to Martin and to Sean. It's wrong for me not to mention Athlone Pipe Band, who really led the parade through the terrace today, and compliments to Athlone Pipe Band, really fantastic. The result, ladies and gentlemen, is that people, you, your families, and your future families now have as a location for reflection, for prayer, and for remembrance of those brave soldiers who took part in the siege of Jadotville. Gormagh Galir.
Just before we commence with our unveiling, just as Frankie said, I'd like to reiterate a few things which I have queued up in this category of special thanks. First of all, to the UN veterans who greatly supported us with sponsorship, and he also gave us the meeting room that we were in for the last 3 years. Also special thanks again, as Ollie said, or as Frankie said, Ollie Dillon. He's a great craftsman, as you can see. He did all the ground space and the workspace. Please give Ollie another big round of applause. I would also like to thank another special sponsor of us, and that's Peter Callahan of Callahan Trade and Frames. And his father, Peter Callahan Sr., was a member of the 35th Infantry Battalion at Jadotville. I'd also like to thank our good friend Bernard Kyle and his wife Patrice for their beautiful music here today. And for one of the best pipe bands in Ireland here in Athlone, Athlone Pipe Band. I think it nearly covered everybody, but there's two special people I have to thank. And first of all, it's our group, Athlone Assumption Road Residents Committee. Deputy Chairperson Tina McCrossan, her husband John McCrossan, Secretary Kathleen Webb, Martin Riley, Treasurer, Deputy Treasurer, his brother Anthony Riley, Anne Monaghan, and we also had Cora Mead with us in the initial stages when we started out. And Cora, unfortunately, was sick at the time and couldn't continue, but we all wish her well. We ought to give special thanks to a special friend of ours, and that is Jim Henson. Jim came with Frankie and ably advised us and enthusiastically got involved. But at the end of the day, if there's one very special person I would like to thank, and that is Councillor Frankie Keenan. He's done sterling work in acquiring and getting all of the grants here for this beautiful memorial. And without Frankie, this memorial wouldn't be here. He's a brilliant man for our community and a great friend of ours. Thank you very much, Frankie. Again, just finally, the staff of Westmeath County Council, when I dealt with them in the application for the grants, they were absolutely brilliant. And that all goes down to the work of Frankie again. Now I'd like to call forward the Mayor of Athlone, Councillor Vinnie McCormack and Leo Quinlan, to unveil our beautiful memorial. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to call forward now a good friend and chairman of the UN Veterans Post 9 here in Athlone, ex-sergeant Peter Phillips.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, fellow comrades. The poem I'm about to read is entitled Soldier. It's etched here in stone behind us, and it's probably no better tribute to a soldier. As you listen to the words, you might realise what a soldier went through. Today it is my honour to say it for those who have passed or who cannot be here today. I was one of those that others dared not to be, and went where others failed to go, and did what others failed to do. I asked nothing from those who gave nothing, and reluctantly thought, except the thought of eternal loneliness should I fail. I have seen the face of terror, felt the sting of fear, and enjoyed the sweet taste of a moment's love. I have cried, pained, and hoped, but most of all I have lived times that others would say are best forgotten. At least, now today I am able to say that I am proud of what I was, a soldier.
Thank you very much, Chairman of UN Vets, Peter Phillips. Now, of the 13 soldiers in this area, there was also 4 from Southwest Square and 4 from Tommy Villas. And with us we have two surviving members. One isn't here today. His name is Paul Malone, but he's referred to on the monument as Francis Malone because that's his first name. We also have ex-Sergeant Paddy Hogan from Tormy Villas, and they're two surviving members from this area. I would now like to call on Father Kelleher to bless our memorial stone.
So thank you to Anthony and to all the people of Assumption Road and your residence committee. Today we are marking the 72nd anniversary of Assumption Road, and it's a great gospel number. Jesus sent out 72 disciples, and they went out in pairs, and they were missionaries. And also the soldiers who leave this land to go on peacekeeping duty are missionaries. They go to bring the gift that they have learnt at home to other people. And sometimes, unfortunately, we may not go to war, but war comes to us. And the great missionary in the New Testament is St. Paul, and he suffered many hardships on his journey. So I'm going to read an extract from the letter of St. Paul to Timothy. You know what I have taught, how I have lived, what I have aimed at. You know my faith, my patience and my love, my constancy and the persecutions and hardships that came to me in places like Antioch, Iconium and Lystra. All the persecutions I have endured, and the Lord has rescued me from every one of them. And so I have fought the good fight, I have kept the faith, I have finished the race. All that there is now for me is the crown of righteousness, and not only for me, but for all of those who have longed for his appearing. The word of the Lord. And so, with that great example in our hearts and minds, I say a prayer of remembrance, especially for those who have gone before us, those who were soldiers who were at Jadotville, and to all family members who come from Assumption Road and Tormy Villas and from Beach Park and Sarsfield Square and throughout the town. God, our loving Father, your power brings us to birth, your providence guides our lives, and by your command we return to dust. Lord, those who die still live in your presence. Their lives change but do not end. I pray and hope for my family, relatives and friends, and for all the dead known to you alone. In company with Christ, who died and now lives, may they rejoice in your kingdom, where all our tears are wiped away. Unite us together again in one family to sing your praise forever and ever. Amen. And so the good news that all were alive in Jadotville came on a Sunday. And so on this Sunday too, we bless this beautiful memorial to all who have gone before us.
Thank you very much, Father Kelleher. Now we are going to bring forward Sean Malone, and he's going to sing the song The Parting Glass.
Of all the money that I've had, well, I spent it in good company, and of all the harm that I've done, alas, it was to none but me. And all I've done for want of wit to memory now, well, I can't recall. So fill to me the parting glass. Good night and joy be to you all. Of all the comrades that there I've had, they are sorry for my going away. And of all the sweethearts that there I've had, well, they would wish me one more day to stay. But since it falls unto my lot that I should rise and you should not, well, I'll gently rise and I'll softly call, good night and joy be to you all. A man may drink and not be drunk, a man may fight and not be slain, a man may court a pretty girl and ne'er be welcomed back again. But since it falls unto my lot that I should rise and you should not, well, I'll gently rise and I'll softly call, good night and joy be to you all. Good night and joy be to you all.
What a beautiful voice. Absolutely brilliant, Sean. Well done. Thank you very much for that rendition. Just a little word of thanks. This event would not happen in one way if we didn't have the media behind us. Radio 103, they interviewed Leo Quinlan about a week ago, and he spoke greatly about Assumption Road. Also, we have the media here in Athlone, the Westmeath Independent, the Athlone Advertiser and the Topic, and we praise them and thanks for all the media releases they've done for this event. So give them a big round of applause. In the words of Lord Byron, when he referred to soldiers, he says, "As they're going down in the sun, and in the morning, we shall remember them, lest we forget." So we're going to do so by remembering the 155 officers, NCOs and men of the 35th Infantry Battalion who served in Jadotville, Katanga Province in the Congo, by bringing up two special soldiers who served there, veterans of Jadotville, Private Joseph O'Kane and retired Sergeant Paddy Hogan, who are now going to lay a reed in respect, in remembrance, in commemoration and honour of these soldiers. Two former soldiers of Jadotville. Thank you very much. Give them a big round of applause. When I was growing up in Assumption Road, my father always said, old soldiers never die, they just fade away. And that's actually on his headstone. So we arrive at the moment where we're about to release our beautiful peace dove, supplied by Patrick McDonough, who lived on Assumption Road and a former soldier, and it will be released by Kathleen Lynch, who was the wife of Corporal Michael Lynch, now deceased, who served in Jadotville. The greatest basis for all freedom is peace, and that was a beautiful gesture to do on behalf of these soldiers. We thank Kathleen for releasing the birds, and we also thank Pat McDonough for supplying them. Give them a big round of applause. So in respect of these soldiers, we now play the last post. We now have Ree Valley. Apologies, we'll just do the raising of our national flag. The beautiful raising of our national flag was by ex-company sergeant from the Command Training Depot of the old structure of the Western Command, and Kai Sergeant Jeffrey Cuff, who was a veteran of the siege of Jadotville. Please give Jeffrey a big round of applause. And finally, we all stand for our national anthem.
Okay.
Thank you to Athlone Pipe Band for the beautiful playing of Arona V, our national anthem. Today is indeed a very proud day for this community. On behalf of our Residents Committee, we'd like to thank you all for coming here.